Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the Liquid Lunch Project. I am Matthew R. Meehan alongside my partner, the professor, Luigi Rosabianca. What's on tap today, Lou?
Matt, the only person that we've met in our short lives that loves small business more than us is Tanya Akimenko. Tanya Akimenko is the founder of Golden Apple Agency, a bookkeeping and accounting firm that loves small business. We're trying to figure out how she got into this space because she's a really bubbly, happy-go-lucky, and usually you don't find accountants with that kind of personality. So Tanya, welcome to the podcast. Tell us, how did you get started with Golden Apple Agency?
Thanks so much for having me. I'm excited to be here. So it all started in a small little town in the middle of Alaska, in the middle of nowhere. And I had no choice but to get into accounting because at that time my ex-husband started a construction company and he needed certified payroll. And we're like, the next accountant over was 2-hour drive. And this is gonna give away my age, but this is before the fast internet, before DSL. This was during the dial-up internet.
Oh, wow.
So you physically had to drive over 2 hours for payroll, certified payroll.
Doesn't
And so
everybody in Alaska have one of those small planes? Like you have to fly everywhere, right?
we weren't that rich. Anywhere you live, if you own a small plane, you gotta be, have some money in the bank and be rich enough to pay all
Okay,
of
so
that.
necessity is the mother of invention. Your husband needs certified payroll, and you're like, you know what? Roll up my sleeves. I'm going to figure it out. So you figured it out.
Pretty much, yeah. I worked in banking at the time, so I understood how it all worked. In high school, I did take some accounting classes, so I really enjoyed the math side of it as well. But I quickly realized that finances with people is not all about numbers and logic. It's all very emotional.
Ah, so you probably in these early days of working with your husband developed a lot of empathy for small business owners.
Yeah, because I was there with him in the grind. Hence
So-
why we're in construct. Hence why I still focus on construction and real estate, because he went on to build houses and sell them and things like that.
Okay,
So
so
he
let's
became a general contractor.
focus on that a little bit. When you're dealing with the trades, HVAC, electricians, contractors, general contractors, all the specialty trades, from an accounting perspective, what skill sets do you bring to the table that are unique, and what do you look out for with those industries that maybe you don't for others?
Yeah, so this is actually very interesting because I realize not very many people know, but when it comes to construction, in accounting, there's either the cash method, which is what came in, what came out during a specific time, or there's the accrual method, which means what did I bill and what bills did I receive. But in construction specifically, it's really a hybrid method that they should be going off of when it comes to accounting and tax preparation, because you might bill like for a project, but you didn't receive the money yet. That means you should not expense those expenses that belong to that project. But then everything else, like your overhead and things like that, that should be on a cash basis. So in construction, like really, and real estate, like if you're building a house and things like that, like no other industry, you should have a hybrid accounting method, which becomes part of cash method and accrual method. And not
So do
very many
you
people know that.
so when you're working with one of these firms, will you break out a profit and loss by job so this way they know how much
We do,
each job is
yeah.
bringing in or how profitable each job is?
We do, yes. We make
Wow.
sure that that's important to the business owner, especially in the trades, that they understand their numbers like that. And a lot of times when I start working with like a small business, they start to realize that they're not charging enough because they're not, once they see their numbers, they're realizing they're not making enough money per job and they need to raise their prices.
Yeah, that's definitely something that we see a lot too. Everybody uses bar napkin math, so to speak. Well, if it costs me A and I sell it for B, I make C. It just doesn't work out that way most of the time. We do a lot of business with people in the trades as well, construction, home builders. And one thing we tend to find out is they underestimate how much money they're going to need for each job before it gets started, right? And they
That's a big one.
always run into cash flow issues, right? So, how do you help business owners actually manage cash flow? And also, when somebody's growing and they're doing well, manage the momentum of not taking on too many jobs, because too much business at once can bankrupt you as well, especially in that space.
That's true. And that's one thing you did mention that a lot of people fail to see, even like accountants, is the cash flow. When you talk about like profit and loss, that just shows you money in and expenses out. It does not show you like your loan payments, your payroll liabilities that are going to come out until they actually come out. So like a cash flow projection is basically the focus between the two, balance sheet and the profit and loss, what's actually going to happen in the account. And so that's like extremely important. A lot of times I start working with the customer, with my clients, and I'm like, "Oh, and we're going to focus on the cash flow projections." And they're like sitting at me, looking at me like, "I've never seen such a report like this." You know? And then the other part of it is they have to figure out their capacity. And a lot of people in construction, they underestimate how long a project will take them for sure.
Absolutely. Sometimes we have a lot of subcontractors that we work with, right? And the GC controls the job and the GC is getting paid. Now, the GC probably won't get paid for 30 to 60 days until after it's completed. And sometimes it takes as long as 90 days for these subcontractors to get their money. What's one actionable tip that you can give the construction workers and subcontractors on how they could manage that cash flow, especially when they're doing larger commercial jobs that are paid by phase?
I would actually recommend getting a loan so they have the cash flow through the project, and then once they get paid, to pay off that loan. So they don't consider that have money coming in, but once they actually receive that money, to pay off the loan right away, not to continue. That's what I recommend for cash flow.
You touch on a pet peeve of mine. And Tanya, Matt, I'm going to ask you both this question because you have to help me through this, okay? I am a general contractor, or I am an HVAC guy, or I'm replacing your kitchen, Tanya, okay? Why am I starting that job with a 10% deposit or a 15% deposit? Why am I not taking a 40% deposit or a 50% deposit? That one change in their business model alters the entire cash flow prognosis. The problem is they're funding the jobs, and they should not be funding the job. The homeowner or the business owner or the building owner should be funding the job.
I totally agree with you. But like with every industry, one bad seed ruins it for the rest of us. And that goes in
It's
every
a race to the
industry.
bottom. I get it. It's a race to the bottom. I know.
But a lot of times people only take 10% is because, there's so many contractors that would never finish the job, Unfortunately, that's, kind of like the thing that homeowner, if I have two people coming to me and they're like, I'm going to need 10% when I start and I'm going to need, the rest when it's completed, versus a person coming in saying, I'm going to need
Okay, well
50% up front.
let's talk about that. I'm taking a 10% deposit because there's little faith in my industry. So how do I put my best foot forward and prove to them that I've never walked out on a job? I've never not completed a job. And these are 20 referrals that you can call, and they've all are beneficiaries of my beautiful bathrooms and kitchens.
I know. I know it's kind of hard, but I would say split up the invoice. So it's not for work, but the contractor spends a lot on materials up front as
Yeah,
well.
yeah.
And I would split up the invoice and actually deliver, because we live in a day and age where you can buy those referrals. You can buy the, unfortunately, we can buy the 5-star ratings and things like
Tanya,
that.
you're from Jacksonville. You're supposed to be kind and southern and sweet.
I am.
I'm the New York cynic.
Oh no, wait! I grew up in Portland, Oregon, so I'm on the north. My core is like the Northwest. We're mean. We tell it to you straight.
So I have a question for you. So you're originally from Ukraine, you were telling us earlier.
Yes.
Then you ended up in Oregon. Then you were in Alaska, and now you're back across the other side of the country again. How did this all happen?
So my trip from, Alaska to Florida, that was personal reasons. Sometimes you make bad choices in your personal life. So I got married, moved to Alaska, and then I was in the middle of divorce. And what's the farthest place I can go? Still being in the US. But
Yeah,
no,
good
the
point.
reality is my sister lived in Jacksonville, and I was the closest to her.
I bet the weather's a little bit better here too,
Oh my
though.
gosh, so much better. But you know what? Alaska is beautiful. If you've never been, I highly recommend to go there at least once because the views, the air, the fresh tasting water can't be compared.
Yeah, I haven't been there yet. It's definitely on my list to go to. And we're trying to squeeze it in, but I will be there probably within the next, I'd say, 18 months. We'll be out there for the first time. So
That's
I-
awesome.
let me ask you this: we like to give actionable advice here. What's the most effective tax strategy every business owner should know?
So I'm going to tell you this, and it's probably not advice you want to hear. But there is no tax advice across the board because a tax return, I always say, is like a fingerprint. It kind of looks the same, but everyone is different. I say that finances, and it took me a while to learn this, but finances are not logical for anybody. It's all 100% emotional. What one person is comfortable with, the other person is not comfortable with and not going to do it. But things like a lot of people that I notice really just miss business expenses that they don't even think it's really a business expense. Like you can, if you have an LLC or an S corporation, you can hold meetings in your own house and pay yourself to rent your house out. I wouldn't do it for the whole year, but you can do it 14 times a year for the Augusta loophole. That's one that a lot of people miss. The other one is like you running to the store to pick up some supplies. You don't even realize you're driving your personal vehicle. You don't even realize you should claim your miles on that vehicle to go get supplies. It's little things like this. It's not a one big thing, but
But it
it's
all
little
adds up.
things. Yeah, and it all adds up. And
Great point.
especially now with the digital age that we live in with social media, your kids should be on your payroll because you know what? There could be models on your Instagram account.
I love that strategy. I actually use it. But
Matt has no Matt's got no problem exploiting
they
his daughters.
actually they do a lot of work for me too in my office. They file papers and they do, you know, some research
But
stuff.
Matt, you're lucky. Your daughters are adorable. Not everyone has adorable daughters.
So, you know, when you first start a business, and a lot of people make this mistake, is all the money that comes in, they wind up spending. And
Oh,
at the
yeah.
and at the end of it, the first year, it's not so bad. But the second or the third year, when business starts to take off, they're still doing it that way. Then the tax man comes and they go, Tanya, can you do my taxes for me? And you say, hey, because we didn't plan properly, you owe $100,000, right? And everybody gets scared. What are some options that small business owners have if they do find themselves in this type of situation?
Well, the IRS is actually able to create a payment plan for you, and their interest rates is way better than if you were to get a loan. I know you guys are in loans, but if you set up a payment plan with the IRS, their interest rates are actually pretty reasonable. You just should pay it off within the next 6 years. And then you need to make steps going forward not to get into the same situation. And starting a small business, a lot of people just put accounting and just finances kind of on the back burner and taxes. I'll deal with that later. But if you're starting a small business, it's so important to dedicate a little bit of time each week to kind of focus on that and budget. A lot of people don't like budgets, but in a business, I feel like budgets is what you survive on.
You know,
Now, how does your team interact with a small business owner? Are they expecting a monthly call, a quarterly recap? Like, what's the day-to-day relationship with an accounting firm and a small business owner? Or what should it be?
Yes, so we have actually packages, and it depends how big a business is. Like if we're paying their bills and helping them collect on their invoices, we meet with them weekly. If we're doing their monthly bookkeeping, we meet with them monthly. If it's just a really small business just starting out, we do meet like quarterly or at least twice a year. So it really depends. But if you're just a business owner and you see your account once a year, that's really not enough. You should see them at least twice a year. Once in the summer, kind of see where you are, or like summer, fall, kind of see where you are. What are your projections? And also, every single year, tax law changes. We have to keep up with it. Like I take a month of December just to learn the tax law that's upcoming for this tax season.
It always amazes me that we work so hard to make more money, right? And our biggest expense, I mean, if you're making a lot of money, you're probably in a 30% tax bracket. The amount of time that people actually spend learning about taxes, because your biggest expense at the end of the day becomes taxes, right?
For sure.
But
Yeah.
yet nobody's putting an hour a month to learn what's going on or how to do anything. We just will have somebody else handle it or hope they do. But sometimes you get some bad advice from CPAs and EAs. And I think it's really important for every small business owner to understand, at least to a bare minimum, of what they can do to defer or pay less in taxes.
Yeah, that's for sure. That's why, like, when we do tax returns, we actually go over the numbers. A lot of accountants, they just hand you the numbers. They're like, here you go, you owe this much. But we do actually have that conversation because to me, that's important to understand. And then anything we say can't be referenced on the IRS website.
Tanya, somebody told me once that a lot of small businesses in America try to whittle their profits down to nothing to minimize their tax threshold. But that makes them non-bankable, right? They're not profitable, so they don't look good on paper, but they don't want to pay taxes. Walk me through that Goldilocks zone of being forthright and honest, paying your fair share, but also creating a robust company that is bankable and scalable.
Right. So I'm going to tell you this, but probably a lot of people don't tell you, is you don't want to spend, especially if you're trying to lower your income, you don't want to spend money on expenses. You want to spend money on assets. So the same furniture, the same computers that you purchase and people put it on the expense sheet, it should really go on the asset sheet and be depreciated because in loans, you want that depreciation schedule to add it back into income, right?
True.
Exactly.
So on paper, on paying taxes, you might look poor, but once you get into the loan and you show all these assets, now you're actually making money and now you're bankable because you have an asset. But a lot of people don't even realize, and like I've even seen other accountants, like I said, one bad person gives a bad name for the rest of us. I seen like $5,000 computer written off as an expense. I'm like, no, that's your asset. You got to depreciate that. That goes on a separate whole page and things like that. And unfortunately, a lot of things, can be um, expensed out, but really should be an asset.
And you learned all this by doing your ex-husband's books.
Pretty much that's how I started. Yes.
So we were speaking earlier, you have a very nice sized business, right? My question is, how did you get all your clients? How did you scale? Especially if you just started in Alaska, moved to Florida. How did this happen?
Yes. So actually, when I moved to Florida, I was like, I don't think I want to do taxes and account. I did build a little bit of clientele from Alaska. They're still with me to this day. But I was like, I don't think I want to work, 80 hours a week during this tax season and just not see my daughter or whatever. And at that time, I was a single mom. So I kind of went into the insurance side of things. I
Okay.
actually became an insurance agent for a little bit. And I was like, wow, this is not for me at all. I don't want to do insurance. This is too much. I'm going to go back to accounting. So I was able to sell my insurance practice. And I was like, if I sold the insurance
only
practice,
only a tax preparer and accountant can go into a field and say, "Wow, that's boring."
but I learned a lot from that because like now I understand insurances so well, and like I had to have my investment license in there too and stuff. So like it was a really good stepping stone for me in general. But after I sold my insurance agency, I was like, you know what? I could probably buy a tax practice agency, and so I was actually able to buy small. It was a very small, like I'll tell you how small it was. It was an older gentleman, and his health was declining, so his income was declining during the last year. So when I tried to get a business loans, I didn't qualify for anything because of the history and stuff like that. So I did had to get like hard money loan, like personal loans to buy him out, and it was really small. But that's how I got the clients, and then once I got the base, I started growing, started marketing and things like that. Starting and I was actually doing like a one man show. I did have a bookkeeper in the office and an office assistant who answered the phones. But then COVID hit and I got sick with COVID. So here I am with like 103
Tanya,
temperature trying to do a tax.
when you bought that firm, how many clients were you able to retain from this retired gentleman?
Um, I would say 90%.
So
Wow.
how many in total? How many did you have?
I think it was about 250 clients, maybe 260.
So you've quadrupled the practice.
Yeah. And it was
Awesome.
Unreal.
after COVID
Oh, so
because
this
COVID
is
hit
very
and I was
recent.
like, crazy temperature, and I'm like doing a tax return and I'm like duplicating things. You should not be doing taxes when you're sick. And I was like, you know
Carry the
what?
zero.
And I was like, you know what? This cannot be all on me. Clients cannot depend on one person. And so I sold my house, moved in with my mom, and I was like, I'm going to hire people. And so I hired people and I started marketing. And yeah, we literally doubled in size like 3 years after COVID, 3 years in a row.
Tanya, you're
Good for you.
fearless.
I know.
Tanya,
That's what people told me.
what do you think? What was your best marketing channel that you did? Is there one that works good for you when you like? Are you running ads on Facebook? Are you going shaking hands, kissing babies,
I
going
mean,
to?
I'm doing everything I was, but on the as far as the ROI is concerned, like a return on your investment, I would say my biggest investment that I'm still grateful to this day, that's like literally the only thing I'm doing right now, is my website, the SEO,
Oh wow,
because it brings us the best clients. It brings us the clients that we want in whatever industry we want, and like I said, the ROI is like 1,000% over.
that's
Awesome.
amazing. So, Tanya, we want to be respectful of your time. Why don't you tell everybody where they can find you and Golden Apple Agency
Yeah,
to get
they
in
can
touch?
just find us on our website, goldenappleagencyinc.com. And because I am an enrolled agent, I am able to work in all 50 states. We don't like California though. That's a that's a specialty taxes.
They're the ones that need your help the most.
uh, California has some crazy rules. But yeah, everybody else we work with people even overseas. But yeah, all 50 states we
Tanya,
do.
let me ask you this. Let's go back in time just a couple of decades, and you were a little girl, still in the then Soviet Union. If I would have told you just a couple of decades fast forward, Ukraine would now be an independent state run by a former comedian. America would be your home, living in Jacksonville. The president is a former real estate developer, TV personality, and you're doing a podcast promoting your accounting business. I mean, what would you have told that little 8-year-old girl?
What would I have told her? I First of all, I wouldn't believe you because I would be like, "What? What are you talking about?"
Oh,
But if I was to able to give myself advice, I would say go for it. Start sooner. Don't be afraid.
I love it. Tanya, thank you so much for being here. I have one question though before I let you run. How did we come up with the name Golden Apple Agency?
So golden apple actually stands for wisdom. And I
Okay.
really wanted to incorporate like wisdom because you can't just have smarts. You can't just have book smarts or whatever. You actually need to have wisdom. Especially with the IRS, there is a lot of gray area. You have to know how to maneuver the gray area without crossing over the lines and things like that. So I wanted to incorporate wisdom, but like wisdom accounting firm does not sound so good. So a golden apple, you have an apple, so that's where I came up with the name. It stands
That's
for
awesome.
wisdom.
That's awesome. Tanya, thank you so much. Everybody, that's a wrap. The Liquid Lunch Project. We'll catch you on the next episode.
Spasiba.
Thank you.
Let's go!